I remember in the notes you had mentioned, like, maybe we could talk about, like, Elon Musk or something. And I just looked up, like, Elon Musk patience just to see what came up. And he seems like the most impatient man. He also had this quote that was like, try to get your 10-year plan done in 6 months and you'll probably fail, but at least you will like learn something or whatever. Yeah. He seems like he has no patience for anything. And I was like, this is not a good example.
This is not what we're trying to iterate at all.
This is not a good example, but he's pretty successful.
I feel like he'll be a good case study for something.
Probably.
People
have so many opinions about him.
People have opinions about Steve Jobs and Tony. People hate Tony.
Why do people hate Tony?
They just think he's full of crap. People think Tony Robbins is full of crap. They think he's full of crap, and like his events are just like, basically they hype you up and they don't really change anything.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a ton of people in our space.
Everyone has an opinion about everyone.
Isn't it so funny though? Like, you just think that the person that everyone should love, like, everyone has an opinion. Yeah. They're like, well, how can you possibly not like this person? Mm-hmm. Like, I think we grew up knowing so many stories about Tony Robbins because he was very influential on Dad's life and his journey, and like he provided so many moments of transformation and like perspective shifts for Dad that led to success in his life. So I always had this positive connotation.
That's so interesting. Like I guess I'm like, I don't ever hear people talk about Tony Robbins, so I don't even know what like the dialogue is, if people like him or not.
People
like I'm
don't
just
like
so
him.
Yeah.
Some people love him, but there are a lot of people that hate him.
Wow.
And believe he is full of crap.
Interesting.
So it just goes to show like that you're always gonna have people that don't like you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done things sometimes in business where like I thought this was like the nicest gesture, the nicest thought, and someone just like had something to say about it or didn't like it. And I'm like,
dang.
How can you not appreciate the thought that went into this? People are just, some people.
What? We can cut this out, but like what?
Like, just like even like trying to be nice to people in the DMs, like send kind messages or like, you know, celebrate them for like launching something or like send a thoughtful voice message, and then come to find out they told someone else that like I was just a bit too much in my messages.
Oh,
right?
I'm offended.
You gotta develop some thick skin. People are gonna hate. People gonna hate.
There was like this time recently, which I'm probably gonna cut this. Hold on, I have to tell you this real quick. But there was this time recently where I messaged someone. Well, I messaged her. I replied to a story that she had posted because I was like, oh my God, like this is so good. Like I love your energy. Like literally the message was like, wow, like this really like shifted my perspective on this thing. Like, and I love your energy so much. Like I love your vibe, whatever. Like something so freaking simple and nice. And she never responded. She saw it and she never responded. And I was just like,
I don't think that means anything.
I know, but I was like, y'all, like do the bare minimum of responding to people and it will go such a long way. Oh my
Honestly,
God. It's not even what we're talking about today, like at all.
It's not, but these are golden nuggets.
Yep.
I'm Ashton Smith.
And I'm Jordan Long.
And we're coming in hot. We're 7th generation entrepreneurs with a passion for fusing creative expression and business fundamentals to help entrepreneurs powerfully expand their companies.
Legacy Creator is a show for creatives, big thinkers, and visionaries who are doing business differently. Together, we unpack topics to help you embody your creative identity, develop as a leader, and powerfully grow your business.
In a nutshell, we're calling you out and calling you higher. Today is going to be another spicy chat, but it's around something that does not come easily to either of us. Like, this is not our natural demeanor. When we talk about patience...
Oh man, yeah. We're both pretty impatient.
I was gonna say the Long women are not known for their patience because I am a natural born Long. Now I'm a Smith, but we are not known for our patience. We get that from our father.
Amen to that.
We really do get that from our dad. So really, this episode's just for us. We're preaching to ourselves. Like, we need this pep talk today.
Yes.
But honestly, we really did want to bring this conversation to the podcast because we see so many people in our community that constantly feel like they are behind or feel like things are so hard, they should be progressing faster, and somehow like they're in the wrong because like things aren't moving quickly. And I think a lot of this comes back to like how fast paced our world is. Like as technology is advancing, things are becoming more convenient and more easy every single day. Mm-hmm. Like, we have got it made. Sometimes I like think back, I'm like, how did my like great grandma like do it?
Yeah. How did people do it in general back in the day? I mean, even when it comes to like work stuff, thinking about like AI is becoming so big now, and it helps speed up processes so much. How did people do it back in the day? I don't know.
How do people survive? Like, how do people like cook in the kitchen, like without some of these like devices that we have today?
Yeah.
People cooked everything from scratch all the time, which I think is the best. But nonetheless, even thinking about like moms, how many kids did our great grandma have?
13, no, 15 or 13.
Can't remember.
There were 2 boys. I think there was 13, but I could be 15. I don't know. I think it was 13 or 15. Yeah.
Like, our great grandma had between 13 and 15 kids, and she didn't have access to like the plethora of things that we have in today's day and age. Like, I'm building my registry for our baby shower, and mom and I have been talking about like, how did our freaking grandmas and great grandmas get by without some of this stuff? Mm-hmm. So, we live in this world that is becoming more and more convenient. Like, we have all of these conveniences around us. Like, we can get our groceries delivered to our front door. Mm-hmm. We can have entire content pieces written in a split second, which we shouldn't. We should definitely customize those AI generated content pieces. That's just a little gold nugget. But we can have, any question answered by Siri, like, in a minute. If I'm like, what does this mean? Or like, where did this come from? Like, I don't have to wonder. I can just go ask Siri. I can go Google it. And I think that we should use these conveniences to our advantage. Like, we're not going to be like rebels over here, like, never use technology and AI. Like, that's dumb. It's like, why not use these things to your advantage? If you can get groceries delivered to your door and that saves you time, absolutely. Like, we should leverage these things, but we can't allow this fast-paced nature to set the tone for entrepreneurship. And I think that that's subconsciously what we've done. But at the end of the day, nothing about entrepreneurship is convenient or easy. Nothing.
Or fast.
No, like, not at all. If it were easy, if it were fast, everyone would be doing it.
Everyone would be starting their own businesses.
Why not?
Yeah.
If it was easy.
Yeah.
What if you could turn your ideas into actual profit for your business? Right now, you may feel like you're doing all the right things, and yet your efforts aren't creating more money for your business. Today, that changes. Our free 90-day profit planner has helped hundreds of creative entrepreneurs transform their income goals into an actualization strategy since 2019. You can download yours for free today. Just visit myawakening.co/profit. That's myawakening.co/profit. Now, back to the show.
Before we dive in even deeper, we do want to highlight the definition, because I feel like we do this in almost every episode now. It's like, what's the definition of this? Because words have meaning and they have power. They mean something, so you better know what they actually mean. So the definition of patience is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset.
It's like, I want nothing to do with that.
Started laughing. I can't, like, oh my gosh. The capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. To accept or tolerate it. Oh my God, that is so not me.
That is like,
God.
I want nothing to do with that. But like, that sounds just like Josh, my husband. I even think about when we travel, if there are delays or changes in the plan, I'm immediately huffing and puffing and I am pissed off. And Josh is like, okay, we'll roll with it and we'll problem solve and we'll do this instead. And I'm just like over here like, thank God that he decided to design you for me, because I need this in my life. Like, we need patient partners because we ain't patient.
No. I mean, yeah, if anything derails my plans, it's off the deep end. Like, for the most part, if I'm in a good mood, maybe I can like manage it. But for the most part, it's like off the deep end. This is the end of the world. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, it's angry and upset, man, oh my gosh, I will start crying. I will break down.
So hopefully this sets the tone and actually shows you that like you can relate to us. Like, you know, you're probably more patient than we are. So we really are speaking to ourselves. But, you know, the very nature of the word patience, it implies that you're going to experience some form of trouble or suffering. Like, you're going to experience it. So you better expect it. You better know it. It also implies that you will not get angry or upset in the midst of that trouble and suffering.
Oof.
And I'm like, how? How do people do that? Oh my gosh. But, you know, social media, it just has you always thinking that you're behind, that you have something else to do, prove, be, you're too slow, like your goals are taking too long to hit, and that somehow disqualifies you. These are literally just mind games. And our environment makes us think that because, again, we live in this world with so many conveniences, a world that's so fast paced. We have social media, which is, you know, constantly showcasing people's marketing, which is just really the highlights of what they're doing and their business and their life. And it makes you think, I need to hurry up. I need to move faster. I'm like not enough. I'm not good enough. But these are seriously just mind games. Like, it's literally all a trick. It's all a facade. It's not true. The number one thing I feel like every person needs, I don't know, it's hard to pick one, but in the top 3 things that we need as entrepreneurs, it would be patience. And I feel that not only from my own journey, but like listening to other people's stories of building businesses and what they went through, not over the span of like 5 years, over decades. Okay. So, you know, if you have a big vision, like things are going to take time and you need patience for that. If things are taking longer than you think that they should, we're just going to say, welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club, people.
We had a meeting on Monday and we're like, why can't we get this thing to work? Why can't we figure this out? This is taking way too long. And we're like, I guess we really started refining this particular thing just a year ago, which in our space, that feels like forever. Mm-hmm. Forever. But that is such a minuscule, teeny tiny amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to be willing to accept that things are just going to take time. Like, they're going to take longer than you think they should. Probably 9.5 times out of 10. 99.9% of the time, things will take a long amount of time. And like, even in the definition, it was talking about accepting or tolerating it. Like, you have to be willing to accept the fact that it's just going to take time. Like, growing your business, y'all, it takes time. That's not something that happens overnight. Overnight successes are like the 0.001%. Like, sometimes that might happen if someone gets really lucky, but like most of the time that's not the case.
And I would argue that like those overnight successes were preceded by a lot of hard work, time, effort, and energy. If we consider an overnight success like a big revenue month or a huge follower count growing, whatever it is, I think a lot of those things are preceded by a lot of consistency. So it's not actually an overnight success. It just kind of looks like it from the outside looking in. And like, you can definitely market it that way, for sure.
Plus, I feel like there are some people who get quick success, like overnight success, but then they can't sustain it. That's a whole other thing. That's a whole other topic we come back. But if you get that success really quickly, most of the time you didn't put in like a lot of the work necessary to be able to sustain that success. Like, a lot of people will rise to fame really quickly and then drop off the face of the earth and you'll never hear about them again. Like, that's the whole nature of like the internet. You have all these trends or like viral pieces of content, viral videos. Like, people get so famous so quickly. They're like the talk of the town for like a week and then they're gone and you never hear about them again.
One-hit wonders, people.
Yup.
Why? Because they don't have anything in place to sustain what they've built. You know, I mean, I've seen and worked with people who have gone viral on multiple occasions and they weren't prepared to like sustain the traffic that came. Either they didn't have a solid content strategy in place, they didn't have a solid sales funnel in place, they didn't have a solid like product or service to sell. So then therefore you're not really monetizing, and we're just talking about numbers at this point. And it's like, what's really the point? Especially if you're in this for business, you know? So that's a whole other element here. But just because things are taking longer, like that does not mean that you are not equipped. This does not disqualify you. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get there. It just means that, hello, in reality, you're a part of the real world. Like this is just how things work. And you have to make yourself available for a process to get to where you want to be. Like it's just not going to happen overnight. And so we have to start shifting our perspective around how long things should actually take, like what is truly realistic. And we have to learn consistently how to exercise patience. And like, we're doing it over here. We're trying our best, people. It's at the end of the day, like that's what your business is going to demand of you. So one of the biggest things we have to do is reset our expectations. We really do. So on one hand, the online space, it has this beautiful way of showing you what's possible. I mean, you can go scroll your feed and see what everyone's doing, what, is possible for your business. But on the other hand, let's actually be real here. Like the online space will have you developing some expectations that are just like, not okay.
Just not okay.
They're like out of this world, not okay. Like they're so warped, they're so whack. And like I think about myself when I found the online business world back in 2017, I was just like astounded by some of the things I was seeing. I had never seen some of the possibilities of like online business, and I was just taken aback. I was like in this deep hole of like, whoa, these people are doing what? Like, 6 figures in 6 months, 7 figures in 2 years. And I would specifically watch a lot of content creators, course creators really preach passive income. So, they had like 6 figures rolling in every single month, and they were like working from a beach somewhere. It was like so cool and like so fantasy world. And really this caused me to develop a lot of unrealistic expectations for my business right out the gate. Yes, it showed me what was possible, but man, I did not keep perspective. I did not keep it to a realistic level. And like I had some serious out of whack expectations for my business. I was like, I'm gonna create a course. I'm gonna become a millionaire. Like, let's go.
Yes.
Let's freaking go. And I think a lot of people have that mentality, especially when you're just getting started. And depending on what level of experience you're bringing to the table when you come into the online space, this really did lead to a lot of the mistakes that I made early on in my business journey too. So one of the biggest problems is that the information provided in the online space, it lacks so much context. So we've talked about that in previous episodes. You really have to shift your perspective and have realistic expectations for you. So if you're a one-woman show, you cannot expect yourself to perform the same as somebody who has a team of 10. I know there have been times where I've seen people with like the dopest marketing presence. They're on every platform. Every piece of content is stellar. And then you look at their infrastructure and they have like a dozen people on their team. So they have the support and infrastructure to actually show up in that way. If you're one person, you can't hold yourself to that standard. If you're a beginner, you can't have the same expectation for yourself as the person who has over a decade of experience starting their business. So, a lot of times when we see people who reach like 6 figures in 6 months, or, they're a 7-figure business owner, like super quickly, a lot of times they're coming from a lot of experience and they have a lot of knowledge to bring to the table to accelerate their growth. And there's nothing bad about that. But again, you just can't hold yourself to that same standard. And then same, if you're working your business on the side, it's more of a side hustle, you can't have the same expectation for yourself as a person who's full-time. And I'm very upfront with people about that. Like the girls that come into like the academy program or our membership, it's like, we got to be realistic about what you can handle. We got to be realistic about like your life and the time that you have available to put towards this business. It may mean that your growth and progression is a little bit slower than other people, but that's okay. We got to keep it realistic. If you don't keep it realistic, you are going to always be unhappy. You're going to always be pissed off. You're going to always feel like you're chasing, and that's no fun. Like the process is 99% of the journey. And if you feel like you are constantly like huffing and puffing and chasing and sprinting that whole time, you're not actually like moving at a sustainable pace, you are going to burn out so quickly. So you have to learn to keep your blinders on and develop the expectation that things are pretty much always going to take longer than you think.
Amen. Everything takes time. Like in life, just in general, everything takes time to develop as a person, to grow into adulthood. Everything takes time, right? And in business, it most likely is going to take so much longer than you think it will to like really develop your products, really iron out your offering suite and your services, or it's really going to take a lot of time to grow your business to where you really want it to be. And I think about popular figures like Steve Jobs, and I was doing a little bit of research because I was just really curious to see like his relationship with patients. And I thought it was really funny because one of the first things I saw was like his own biographer in his book literally said that Steve Jobs was like never very patient. Like patience was never one of his virtues.
Amen.
But I dug deep into this article, and I'll probably include it in the show notes if you want to read it, because it is really good. It breaks down like his whole relationship with patients and how much patience he actually had. He had patience where it mattered. There was this quote I really wanted to highlight from the article because it is just such a clear depiction of the type of patience that he had. So it says, just as he had zero patience for anything that didn't advance the creation of outstanding products, so he had seemingly infinite patience for anything he thought would lead to the insanely great products he dreamed of. So he had a lack of patience for things that like didn't move the needle forward, basically. Like he didn't have any patience for things like if it wasn't going to lead to an outstanding product, he wasn't going to spend the time doing it. But he had a lot of patience where it mattered when it came to product development. He was very tedious. Like he was very tedious with his work. He was very focused on making excellent products that not only worked well, but that looked visually appealing. I mean, he would have his team do like tons of iterations of product design. He would go through like all these different shades of colors just to find the right shade for a product. It was almost to a point where it was like really tedious and people probably were like so annoyed with him. But he had patience where it mattered because he wanted to create excellence in his work, in his products. He had really high standards for not only himself, but for his work, for his company, Apple. I mean, he had so many high standards for the products themselves. Like he wanted to create excellence. So he was patient to make sure that those products were developed well, that the product design was what he really wanted it to be. And oh my gosh, like that worked out so well for him and Apple.
I would say so.
Oh my God. Yeah, he took the time necessary to do things well, to do it like the right way, to put all of his heart and effort into the products and into like the campaigns, the marketing, the way that they presented it to the world. He had unlimited patience when it came to those nitty-gritty details. Another quote I just wanted to highlight from this article, because it was so good. The article is really great. If you want to go read it, definitely recommend. But it said that he had practically unlimited patience, but patience of a very specific kind. He had patience for what he held important and only for what he held important. And combined with his other virtues, this patience was essential to his and Apple's success. You have to be patient in the work that you're doing. You have to be patient in the trenches of the work. You have to be patient through the product development and the design. You have to be patient in the growth as well. I mean, if you want to grow your business, y'all, that takes so much time. Like it took time for Steve Jobs to get to where he was, you know?
I love too in that story just how much emphasis and care that he placed on the product, on like actually his craft, like what he was creating. And I think there's even like lessons to take away in that, you know, if you have a really stellar product, like that truly your product and your service, like that's central to everything. And I think that we should take a lesson from that and focus more on what we're creating, the experience we're bringing through our business for our clients, because that is such a solid foundation when you market that. And yes, you have to know how to market well. I'm not going to deny that. Absolutely. But when you market that, you get people into whatever that product or service is, like there's going to be ripple effect, constant growth if you have something that has truly been created from a place of excellence and care. So I love that takeaway as well.
Yeah. And it's not about perfection. It's not about having a perfect product. It's about having an excellent product. I think that should be the focus. Creating something of excellence, creating something that's well-rounded, creating something that people need and that they're going to love.
Yeah. So really you have to be patient in the work that you're doing. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to exercise patience because what we're doing feels so monotonous. But like my dad, he always said, like, life is full of mundane Mondays. Like, it's not the glitz and glamour that we think it is, you know? When I first entered the online space and I saw all of these incredible possibilities and, you know, what these people were earning and the communities they were creating and the fulfillment and the travel and all the things, like, that's what you think it is. And that's like the 1% to 5%. And that's why we always talk about the importance of like buying into what you're building and like the vision and really caring, being committed, being dedicated to something, because you are going to have like the most monotonous days. Like there's a lot of monotony to running your own business. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to not associate success with glitz and glamour and like all of these highs all the time, all of these dopamine hits. That's how you're going to get lost in things that don't matter. You got to get in the monotony of the work and actually embrace it and learn to love it. Unfortunately, like you really, really do. Like we're having some of the same conversations that we've had over the last couple of years of like improving this, improving that. How do we enhance this? How are we adjusting our strategy? How are we going to change that? And it can feel like it's just never ending, but that is business. It is monotonous and you have to consistently focus on making things better, whether that's your product, your service, your presence, your marketing, your branding, your copy. You have to focus on those things. And yes, it can feel monotonous, but that is the nature of entrepreneurship. Things are going to take time and you just have to accept that.
Amen.
Another thing that we have to be really conscious about is that we actually expand the way that we are viewing business, the way that we're thinking about what we're building. We have to think bigger. We have to think longer term because social media, the online space, it will have you thinking so small. It will have you just honed in on like the 1%, you know, you'll be thinking within the confines of, you know, a quarter over quarter progression or a year over year progression. We place so much emphasis on these short bursts of time, monthly, quarterly, yearly, but building your vision, like it just requires that you think bigger than that. I am so sorry to tell you, ask any entrepreneur, especially those that are bigger name or people that have really a lot of lived experience and they've grown and they built something massive. When our dad reflects on his time in business, I always find it so interesting because he always tells us that he would measure the success of decisions that he made or investments that he made over a 5-year timeline. I'm sorry, what? Over a 5-year timeline. So if he made a specific hire, he would see how that would affect the company over the next 3 to 5 years. If he made an investment, again, he would see where is the business at due to this over the next 3 to 5 years. He wasn't necessarily measuring that in a span of 3 months. Now, I do know for a fact that he was watching, he was measuring, he was being intentional because my dad is very strategic. That was one of his greatest skill sets in business, but he would give things time. I mentioned in our last episode that he referred to being in business for 14 years as still being a beginner business. And I was just like, what? So people that have built something of substance, people that have built something on a larger scale, like they understand that things really are going to take time. And you can't always think month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. We have to start thinking decade over decade. Truly. And that is such a perspective shift, especially in our space. You have to know that like, you're not always going to have the best month, the best quarter, the best year. And if you measure like your success off of that, you're going to be so frustrated all the time because business is constantly ebbing and flowing. It's not this like linear upward journey all the time. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have peaks and dips. And so sometimes you're just consistently moving forward. You're taking those steps towards the larger vision and you have to keep the vision. You have to keep the patience, even when things are taking forever and things might be slower or lower in that season. If you have a big vision, you better have a big runway. I think that's so important. So if you picture like a 4-seat aircraft versus a 150-seat aircraft, I want you to imagine how different the runway is going to be for those different aircrafts. The size of that aircraft is going to determine how much of a runway they need in order to take off and like carry the weight of what they're bringing to the destination, how many people they're carrying. And the same is true with your vision. Like the bigger the vision, the longer you should allow for your timeline. And this isn't always true. Like some seasons are going to push you faster than others. Some seasons you're going to experience breakthrough because of all the seeds you planted in the previous one. But I think that that's more of a rarity. It's not the everyday. And so we need to have this expectation that things are going to continue to take time and we have to exercise patience in between now and where we're going.
Yeah, I think we can get so focused on like measuring our success on these shorter time periods. It's like people want to accomplish so much within like just 1 year, and you try to like break it down into each quarter. And like, yes, there's things you can accomplish in a year's time, like duh, but there's not as much things that you can accomplish during that time. Like there's not as many things you can accomplish during 1 year. It's actually not a long period of time. And while you were talking about that, I was thinking about like the stock market. If you invest money into the stock market or whatever, if you obsess over that and you check your account every day, you're going to be in a world of pain and fear.
Misery.
Yes. Like you're going to be upset when the stock crashes. You're going to be upset when it is not going the way you want it to, but then it also comes up again. Like the stock market crashes, then it comes up. The economy crashes, then it comes up. There's always ebbs and flows and like these external circumstances. And the same is true in your business. Like there are going to be months where it's like, oh, this is a really, really good month or a really good quarter. And then the following quarter, it might not be as great. So like you cannot really measure your success in that amount of time. It's such a short time frame. You have to start thinking way bigger picture, like way bigger. 5 years, 10 years, start thinking like that. And then I think that also gives you a little bit of peace of mind too, because you're not so stressed and anxious, like, oh, this isn't going the way I wanted or whatever within a given year or within a given quarter. Like you will probably feel so much more peace because you're like, okay, like I'm putting in the work now. We'll see 3 years from now, 3 to 5 years from now. And I know that's a lot of time. Like it's hard. Like that perspective shift is hard for sure. But I think you have to start thinking longer term. It's going to give you some peace of mind, I think.
Yeah, I love this quote from Tony Robbins. I don't know why we've just been referencing him in the last couple episodes, but we have been. He's got some good things going. He says we often overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in a decade because people think so short term. And again, we're so accustomed to instant gratification in this fast-paced world. But at the end of the day, if I could tell you how many people, come to me, we are working together one-on-one or in a program, and all of the goals that they have for a 6 to 12 month period, I am like, honey, I love this ambition and I'm going to do my darndest to like support you with these things. But I really think we need to take a look at how much time you have available, how many new initiatives you want to prioritize, and like what's truly realistic. How can we do these things with excellence and actually like move the business forward? We try to cram so many things into such a short period of time, and that ends up harming us because we're trying to do too much at once and you never end up getting anywhere meaningful. So I think even this perspective shift, it helps you get more meaningful work done and focus on the areas that really matter and go to a place of more depth and substance with what you're creating and the initiatives you're putting out, which at the end of the day, I think are going to create greater results for your business.
I mean, thinking about Steve Jobs, looking at his story from like when Apple first started to like when the iPhone came out, I mean, it was a long period of time. He and Steve Wozniak started Apple in the Jobs family garage. And Steve Jobs was only 21. So he was really young. He was really wet behind the ears at that point. But Apple was officially founded in 1976. And then the first Macintosh computer was introduced in 1984. So like 8 years later. The iPhone, which to me is like the biggest Apple product. It's like the most well-known and notorious and like everyone loves it. Everyone loves that product. The iPhone was released in 2007. So I know in between like the Macintosh and the iPhone, there were stepping stones. There were other products they were releasing. There was like the iPod and the iPod Touch, and these things were really revolutionary. But I think the iPhone is like the pinnacle. It was like the biggest thing. Like you're combining the iPod Touch experience with like the music and the apps and the games with a phone. Like you can call people, you can text people. It was huge at the time. That was 31 years from the time that Apple was founded to when the iPhone released, which again, to me is like one of the biggest Apple products. I know the Mac is huge, but like the iPhone is like the pinnacle of Apple. Like when you think of Apple, you think of the iPhone. It's like their most famous product. That was 31 years. There's so many things that happened during that time. I mean, I think Steve Jobs like left Apple at one point, then came back, but like that was so much time. Those are so many years that they were working on their products and they were inventing things and coming up with new things. And yeah,
decades.
It took a lot of time.
Decades.
31 years. That's like older than you.
Yep.
Yeah, like insane. The reason I measure that by like the iPhone releasing, because I feel like the iPhone is what really created a lot of fans for Apple. And the iPhone is really, I think, what really put them on the mark in the world of technology, even though the Mac was huge and like there was a lot of success with that. But the iPhone, like that created so many fans. I feel like when people get an iPhone, they get all the Apple products and they're not going back to Android. They're not going back to these other products. Like that's how they created raving fans, was over the years, they created great products. And then they came out with the iPhone, and that took 31 years from the time Apple was founded.
It's just crazy. How many people can we think of in our space that would be committed to an endeavor for 30 years? 31 years.
We don't think like that.
We really don't. And that is the entire point. The online space feels like it is this big world, but it is really a very, very small world. It is not the end all be all. And I think there's a lot of small-mindedness in the online space, and there's a lot of warped thinking. There's a lot of really good things, and we love it. Like we love being present there, but we just want to bring this perspective shift to the table today and really encourage you to start thinking over a span of like truly 5 to 10 years. Start thinking on the scale of decades, because that's really how the greats think. So if you have a big vision, you got to think over a longer period of time, and you can still measure things month over month and quarter over quarter, although I would say maybe more so quarter over quarter. And you should have initiatives. You should be working. You should be taking those steps, working on those stepping stones that lead to like the pinnacle of the iPhone, for example. There was a lot that preceded that. But again, you have to start thinking in a matter of decades, not quarters and not years. Things take so much more time than that. You know, we hope that this just shifted your perspective around the fact that like you are so qualified. Just because things are taking time, like that does not mean that you're ill-equipped. That does not mean that you shouldn't be here. It's just like, hello, welcome to the club. Like we're all doing things that are taking way longer than we envision. And don't let the online space fool you, trick you into thinking that you're the only one who's behind, that you're the only one who's chasing and trying to get where you want to be. Like we're all on that journey, and we have to start actively practicing true patience and truly building that muscle. And I think that's something that never stops, especially if you're someone that struggles with patience like us. You know, you're always exercising that muscle. We have to practice that because things are just going to take time. Reset your expectations. Truly start thinking different about what your business is going to require of you to get to where you want to go. It's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be quick. And in fact, you don't want it to be that, because you want to sustain once you get there. Reset your expectations, and then again, start thinking bigger picture. Start thinking for the long term. Stop thinking year over year and start thinking decade over decade. And if your vision isn't that big, then find a way to expand your vision as you keep moving. I think even for us, like when I first started my business, my vision, I didn't have a vision for 10 years. I had a vision for a year, you know? And I think even now, like we're still growing into that 5 to 10 year vision. So practice that, practice thinking bigger about what you're doing, about where you're going. And again, like make yourself available for the time it's going to take to build what you want to build. Whether that's monetary, that's like a really cool product or service, that's a team. Embrace the fact that it's going to take time, and like look at that time as something that's serving you and developing you and preparing you.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys so much for your time today. We'll catch you in the next one.